This calories in, calories out model doesn't work at all. It's about controlling your hunger. There are systems, very powerful systems within our body that tell us to stop eating. People lose weight, like a lot of weight, and they keep it off.
The true cause of excess weight gain, according to metabolic expert Dr. Jason Fung, is insulin. That's why even the strictest diets and toughest workouts often fail to produce the results you're hoping to see on the scale.
If you think about how we gain or lose weight, you only gain or lose weight if your body tells you to gain or lose weight. And that's just because everything is run by hormones in our body, right? You don't grow without your hormones, right? You don't get any taller unless your hormones tell you to grow taller. Nothing happens in the body. That's how our body gets chemical messages. But for some reason, people in obesity medicine sort of ignore the whole role of hormones in that. So there are lots of different hormones that you have to consider. So insulin is one of the major ones you have to consider. That is to say that insulin is a hormone that tells your body to gain more fat.
But insulin itself isn't the enemy. The real trouble starts with carbohydrates. When carbs are consumed in excess, they spike blood sugar levels, forcing the body to release large amounts of insulin. Over time, these repeated insulin surges can overwhelm your cells, leading to insulin resistance and making weight gain harder to control.
Insulin resistance is a term that's used because the blood glucose goes high and the body doesn't like it so high, so it makes more insulin to sort of allow it to go in. So one of the actions of insulin is to allow glucose to go from the blood into the cell so that the cell can use it for energy. Insulin resistance is a term that they use when they say, oh, well, there's lots of glucose in the blood and there's lots of insulin, so why is it not going into the cell? So they say the cell must be resistant to the effect of insulin.
It may seem like the only way to control insulin is to eliminate carbs entirely or rely on fasting. But Dr. Fung points out smarter strategies that let you work with your body without overhauling your diet. These simple tricks help prevent sharp spikes in blood sugar and the insulin surges that follow. One of the most powerful is surprisingly easy, changing the order in which you eat your food. This method has long been used by people with diabetes to manage blood sugar, and research shows it truly works.
It turns out that the order in which you eat your food may make a big difference in how high your blood glucose goes as well. In 2015, some smart researchers did an early pilot study in people with type 2 diabetes. And these were people who were taking metformin, and they measured their blood glucose eating the same exact meal, but with the order of how they're eating switched up. So they took 11 patients and they gave them, on the one hand, the carbohydrates first, and that was consisting of bread and orange juice, and then they would wait 10 minutes and then they would serve them the protein and fat, which was skinless chicken breast and vegetables, a salad with a vinaigrette and steamed broccoli. And what they found was that there was a very big difference in the blood glucose, not only how high the glucose would go, but also in the blood insulin levels. In fact, the peak glucose was down a stunning 54%, and the insulin area under the curve, which is that part of the insulin that your body is seeing over time, decreased by 48%. That's a huge difference considering that the two meals were exactly the same. The only difference was, were you eating the carbs first or the carbs last? And when you ate the carbs last, that seemed to make a big difference for these people with type 2 diabetes.
The truth is, digestion happens much slower than most of us realize. When you start a meal with protein and healthy fats, they act like traffic controllers for your digestive system. The carbohydrates you eat afterwards slow down, almost as if they're caught in a traffic jam. This prevents sudden blood sugar spikes, meaning carbs aren't broken down or absorbed too quickly, and when your body does process them, insulin rises slowly and in a much more controlled way. But the real power of this approach shows up in weight loss. Eating protein and fat first naturally stimulates the release of the GLP-1 hormone, the same hormone that signals fullness. As a result, you feel satisfied longer and experience fewer cravings, especially for sugary foods. This makes the strategy especially helpful for people struggling with significant weight issues who find drastic diet changes overwhelming both mentally and physically. The best part: you're not depriving yourself or forcing extreme changes. You're simply helping your body eat smarter. You naturally eat less, stay full longer, and keep your blood glucose level stable, all without feeling restricted.
If eating the exact same number of calories, eating the exact same foods, but simply switching the orders means that we can face 40% less glucose, that means we might be able to prevent the onset of type 2 diabetes. We might be able to take less medications. We may be able to lose weight because, again, that lower level of insulin is going to cause less weight gain. And what it means is that you really have to front load your meals so that you're taking your proteins and your fats and your vegetables right up front and then leaving the carbohydrates to the end. The best effect is if you're going to be even able to wait a few minutes. In the study, they waited 10 minutes before serving so that it's like one of those restaurants where you get an appetizer and then you wait and then you have dinner. Well, in this case, front load the proteins and fats. And there's a second benefit because once you eat those proteins and fats, maybe you don't want to have those carbohydrates after all.
Another effective way to blunt the impact of carbohydrates is to pair them with organic acids. In simple terms, this means eating carbs alongside foods like kefir, yogurt, or butter, which contain lactic acid, or using olive oil for its fatty acids, or even adding vinegar, which provides acetic acid. These acids interact with enzymes in your saliva and slow the breakdown of carbohydrates dramatically. The result is slower digestion, steadier blood sugar levels, and a much lower glycemic impact from the carbs you eat.
A study where they looked at bread with butter versus bread alone, and this goes to the idea of the naked carbohydrates. If you take the bread, you can see that the area under the curve or the glycemic index are both higher. Glycemic index of 71. When you eat it with the butter or with olive oil, for example, you can drop it to 50, which is almost a 1/3 drop in the glycemic index simply by taking some olive oil with the bread. So the traditional way that some people do with the olive oil and the vinegar and dipping it can be very useful. The acid is going to slow down the digestion by blocking those salivary amylases, and the olive oil makes it gives it the intestines something else other than the pure carbohydrate.
From a weight loss perspective, this approach also tackles one of the biggest challenges: hunger and satiety. It naturally extends your body's fasting window, the time when fat becomes the primary fuel source. More importantly, it helps optimize insulin levels. Even a modest reduction in insulin spikes can translate into visible changes on the scale. It also makes sense to help your body use up extra energy after you eat, gently steering it toward burning stored fat instead of saving it. That's why Dr. Fung recommends something very simple: a 30-minute walk after each meal. Walking helps regulate blood sugar, but even more importantly, it switches your body into energy-burning mode. Think about what most people do after eating. They sit down, lie on the couch, or turn on the TV. Those habits signal the body to store energy and shift into energy-saving mode. But taking even a short walk flips that signal in the opposite direction, encouraging fat burning instead. It's a small, easy habit that can make a surprisingly big difference in your metabolism.
After you've eaten a meal, there's all this glucose. And when you walk, you're going to encourage your muscles to start burning that glucose rather than storing it away. And because you don't want to store as much of it away, your insulin levels are going to fall. So for example, in this study, they found that when you had a walk before the meal, it didn't really do much to the blood glucose. You see that the blood glucose there is about 6.5 after the meal. However, if you walk immediately after the meal, it's going to go right down to about 5.6 or so. So it's actually a significant drop. If you wait 30 minutes, it's sort of in between, and the longer you wait after the meal, the less effect you're going to get.
Of course, using Dr. Jason Fung's methods won't cause dramatic weight loss overnight, but this is a comfortable, sustainable weight loss strategy that doesn't feel like a struggle. By applying these simple tips, you naturally drift into a lower carb way of eating without consciously forcing it. And as your metabolism begins to rebalance, the extra weight slowly starts to melt away, almost effortlessly. Struggling to lose weight? Click the video to discover Dr. Jason Fung's smart fasting method to train your body to burn fat naturally without starving or exhausting yourself.